Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our live webinar on Going Digital Simulations and Gaming in Apprenticeships. My name is Milda, and I'm a member of the Apprenticeship Support Services team at Ecoris. My colleagues Luca and Selina will be helping me today with the facilitation of this webinar. Before we start, I would like to remind you that all attendees are muted automatically on arrival to this session. Therefore, if you like to comment or ask a question during the webinar, please use the questions box at the bottom of the control panel to the right of your screen. If you are experiencing audio or any other technical issues now or any time during the webinar, please click on the raise your hand button or send us a message in the questions box and we will contact you separately to solve your problem. As usual, this webinar session will be recorded. The webinar recording and presentation will be uploaded on the EAfA website and will be shared with you by email in the upcoming days. So now I would like to introduce you to today's moderator, Simon Brook, who is a senior researcher at Ogham IPS. Simon will present the structure of the webinar and today's speakers.
Thank you, Milda. The webinar consists of an introductory note, a presentation concerning where to position simulation and gaming in the digital apprenticeship landscape, the presentation of best practice examples, and to finalize a presentation on how to integrate simulation and serious games into apprenticeships. So today's speakers are Tim Schreiber from the Director General for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion at the European Commission. Tim is a policy officer in the unit in charge of vocational education and training, apprenticeships and adult learning, where he mainly focuses on the innovation in VET, higher VET and skills for green transitions. Andrew McCoshen is the second speaker, and he is a senior expert in vocational education and training and director of Plexus Research and Consulting and an associate faculty member of the Further Education and Training Research Centre at Dublin City University. He will address where simulations and gaming sit in the wider digital learning landscape, and he's currently helping to deliver the European Commission's Apprenticeship Support Service and was previously the external expert in the VET working group coordinated by the Commission, which focuses on digitalization and innovation. The third speaker is Unai Ziarzolo, a mechanical engineer and a senior project manager at CIFP Miquel Antuna, a VET center at Bergara, Basque Country, Spain. Unai is currently working on the Exam 4.0 platform and Workshop 4.0. These are both led by Technica, where new learning scenarios for advanced manufacturing in VET are being designed and implemented. He represents Technica as a technical advisor in numerous groups, including the European Forum for VET, the World Federation of Colleges and Polytechnics, and UNESCO UNIVOC, where he works in the digitalization workstream of the BUILD project. Our fourth speaker is Petri Anonimi, a head of education sector in industry and transport at KP Edu Vocational College in Finland. And last but not least, we have Alessandro Bropito, a senior specialist in digital skills and learning at the European Training Foundation. He will discuss how to effectively integrate simulation and serious gaming into apprenticeships. Alessandro is a member of the European Commission Working Group on Digital Education. He has been working on the Eastern Partnership countries, Western Balkans and Turkey on digital education policies and practices with a focus on VET. And without any further delay, I give the floor to Mr. Schreiber, who will introduce you to the topic in question.
Thank you very much, Simon. Also a big welcome from my side to all of you who have joined today's webinar. It's a pleasure to make the introduction to this very interesting topic. Now, why do we need to digitalize apprenticeships? To say this in 5 minutes, it will be a challenge, but I will try to keep it short and to the point. To start with a few figures, of course, we need digital skills because today already 90% of all jobs require some kind of digital skills. But it's not only for the labor market that we need digital skills, also more and more to participate in the society we need digital skills. But this is only one truth. The other truth is that in 2019, still 44% of the EU population were without basic digital skills and 15% were even without any digital skills. Now, with the COVID-19 crisis, I would say that the necessity to advance faster, to equip people with digital skills has even been increased. We have seen a massive shift to online technologies, to remote connections. So this topic is even higher on the agenda than it was anyway before. Us at the European Commission, we see digital skills and jobs more than ever as a key priority. And this is also reflected in all of our key policy documents. To give you one example, we adopted this March the European Social Pillar Action Plan, which set the target that by 2030, 80% of adults should have at least basic digital skills. Now, before I said 44% do not have these basic digital skills, meaning that 56% have them. So this target means that we have to advance from 56% today to 80% in 2030, which is ambitious, but I think it's feasible. And we were very happy that also the heads of government and state at the Porto Summit in March this year welcomed this target of 80%. Now, the acquisition of digital skills is also supported throughout many other major initiatives that we have launched recently. Just to give you a few names, the European Skills Agenda last year focused on digital skills in one action. We have the Digital Education Action Plan, and we have the European Education Area. Now, what is the link now to vocational education and training? I think that vocational education and training can play a very important role in equipping people with these digital skills, especially because of its work-based element that can make sure that the digital skills are also relevant for the labor market, that students today learn through initial vocational education and training, but also people that are already in the labor market can learn through continuing vocational education and training. Simon already mentioned the working group that we had on digitalization, innovation, and VET that was running between 2018 and 2020. And where experts from member state governments, social partners, and others were working together to look into how VET should tackle these issues of digitalization and innovation. And two of the main takeaways from this group were that on the one hand, VET needs to make more use of new tools and pedagogies in order to better anticipate the increasing pace of innovations and digitalization, because what we see today is only the beginning of this process. But what is important for me is that it's about using these technologies in a smart way. So it's not about just using digital technologies for its own sake, but it's really to use them in order to improve the quality of apprenticeships and of VET. For example, by making more use of immersive technologies. And therefore, I'm also very happy today to hear about very practical example how this is already happening on the ground. The other takeaway from this working group, and this I think is also very important, is that yes, we have to make more use of digital tools, but we also have to better equip students with digital competences and to make them able to become innovators themselves. So it's not only about using digital technology that has been developed somewhere else, but also to put VET schools, VET students, VET teachers in a position to become innovators themselves. And this, if you want, is also the key message from my introductory words, that it's about using technology, but it's also about equipping students with the digital competencies and also the teachers to equip them with the digital competencies to make best use of these tools. Now, my final point is about the so-called selfie tool that we have developed on EU level, because I think it's very important for VET schools to know where they stand in terms of digitalization, to then also see where to improve. And we have developed a very useful tool on EU level, which helps schools through a questionnaire to see their strengths and weaknesses. And this year, we will also launch an additional module that is particularly targeted towards VET schools. It's the selfie tool for work-based learning, where we will also integrate the views of in-company trainers and therefore of the companies, so that VET schools and companies together can see how to best integrate digital tools in VET programs. And without much further ado, I'm very much looking forward to today's webinar and give the floor back to Simon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim. And before I hand over to Andrew, I would like to ask you, the audience, what you think is the potential of simulation and gaming in apprenticeship training. So do you think that apprenticeship should only be a real-life work experience, or that simulation and gaming can reduce the cost in apprenticeship training, but real-life work experience is actually better? Or the third option, simulation and gaming can enhance the learning experience in apprenticeships, as learners can experience more diverse work settings in a simulated environment compared to the real life work setting. Or finally, simulation and gaming can replace to a large extent real life work experiences in apprenticeships. Milda, could you please launch the poll? And I give you a few, well, half a minute or a few seconds to provide an answer. So did we all cast our vote?
Yes, I see that most of our audience voted, so I will close now and I will share the results.
All right, okay, so what we see is that you selected the third option the most. So simulation and gaming can enhance the learning experience in apprenticeships, as learners can experience more diverse work settings in a simulated work environment. So you actually kind of are in favor of that there's really an added value of kind of looking at simulation and gaming to really kind of advance the learning, whereas only I think only one person said that it can fully replace real life experiences. And also a lot of you, so 1/3 indicates that it can indeed reduce the cost. So there's actually really a good, as the audience indicated, there's actually a good rationale to kind of look more closely into simulation and gaming, as it adds more learning experiences and it might also reduce cost. Okay, with that, thanks a lot to the audience. Andrew, now the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Simon. Tim mentioned that he had a challenge to do try and describe the relationship between apprenticeships and digitalization. And similarly, the answer to this question in a matter of a few minutes is, of course, going to be in outline. But I think the purpose here is really to provide you with a quick pencil sketch of how we got to where we are, and indeed where simulations and games sit in this landscape. A lot of what I'm going to say is taken from the output from the VET working group that Tim also mentioned, and I think maybe we can provide you with a link to that report a little later on. So to begin, how did we get here? That's always a good question to start with. So next slide, please. Thank you. It's quite interesting, actually, if you sketch out some of the technological developments which really impact on digital learning. And of course, we can go all the way back to the 1980s with computer-aided instruction. But over time, of course, hardware and software has improved. And I think in the last 10 to 15 years, there's been a huge increase in the capabilities to offer new and different experiences in learning because of the results of technological change, and also to provide faster and more tailored feedback. So on the pedagogical side, we see those two things really emerging quite strongly now, both in terms of what can be taught and how it can be taught, and also how assessments can be carried out in a much more kind of efficient way, particularly in using technology in general, but particularly with regard to using simulations. The other thing I think to note from this is that, of course, tech has been around for some time, and I guess we sort of lack a lot of data, particularly in the VET field and the apprenticeship field, regarding how the uptake of technology, and you can draw your own conclusions from this. But I think, and from your own experiences, and maybe it'd be good to hear about those in the chat boxes and the question boxes at the end. But it certainly took a long time for nearly all schools in the UK, for example, simply to get an interactive whiteboard. And I think we can say that actually one of the features of this is perhaps the slow rate of take up. And we can also ask questions about the depth of the effect of the technologies being used in learning, by which I mean we need to look at how far tech is being used for perhaps for new teaching and learning rather than just as an add-on to what's already been done. So next slide, please. How does tech relate to teaching and learning? Well, I think the, can we have the next slide, please? The slide seems to have stalled a little. Well, what I wanted to do was go on to talk about, here we are, how does tech relate to teaching and learning? And I think what I've tried to capture here is basically show digital technologies on the one side and teaching and learning on the other. There are no easy categorizations of these or way to summarize these. And I think we saw on the last slide that you know, techs develop and evolve and they come and go. And on the digital technology side, we'll typically find in a vet school mixes of both old and new tech. And I think it's important to emphasize that while we're talking about simulations and gaming, they sit within this landscape of high tech, low tech, and no tech, to borrow a quote from Ashwani Agarwal at the ILO, and all have a role. It's all about how they complement teaching and learning. And it's very difficult to really to get to the bottom of these relationships between technologies and teaching and learning. And also a lot is left to teachers and learners to decide what tech to use and how to use it. That was really the method mainly used for the introduction of digital learning before COVID, but of course COVID has upset the apple cart in that sense. And it'll be interesting to hear from people what their experiences are in terms of state interventions by regional governments to support teachers and trainers in this respect. What can we say in relation to this in a little bit more detail? Well, I think when we're talking about simulations and gaming, there are a few points to make. I mean, digital simulation and gaming can, for example, enhance the type and scale of experiential learning. And game-based learning, we also find, has a good fit with important aspects of apprenticeships. And the expansion of gaming has the potential to bring a number of benefits. We often find that when we're looking at software that's not designed to have game-based elements, that actually students in apprenticeships introduce their own game-based learning themselves. Of course, a lot of these simulations and game-based learning also involve social and collaborative learning, and its particular strength of the gaming aspect of this. There are also questions to be asked, of course, around, for example, blended learning, how blended learning might be applied to situations where two learning environments are involved, the classroom and the workplace. There's a complexity there that we don't find in school-based general education, for example. And as I've already mentioned, there is potential for simulations and gamings to widen the evidence for assessment and to speed up the feedback process. Of course, there's also potential for tech to link schools and workplaces and improve the relationships and the dynamics between teachers and trainers and schools and companies more generally. Why is all this important? Well, I think these simulations and gaming all enable things like project-based learning, social and collaborative learning by doing, to be enhanced and scaled up indeed. And actually what these methods do, of course, is contribute considerably to the development of skills that are needed in the modern workplace, not just the technical skills, but also the more transversal skills, the skills that can be transferred between occupations that are increasingly important. So that just gives you some flavour really for the relationships potentially between technology and learning. What about the positives and the negatives of simulations and gaming? Well, there are many of these, and I'm sure you can think of more to add to this list. But it's on the positive side of things, as I've already mentioned, they support pedagogical innovation. They offer learners new and different experiences. They've also been shown to improve learner motivation and engagement, and also to support personalization in learning, of course. Their simulations are cheaper than the real thing once they're developed, and of course they can reduce preparation and cleanup time, enable more practice more practice opportunities within a given time period, and for many workplaces they can offer safer opportunities for learning as well. What about the challenges? The positives are balanced out, of course, by some negatives, as always. As I've mentioned, I think the rates of digitalization have historically been slow in work-based learning compared to other sectors. COVID has come at a time when actually there was more potential with the types of technologies available. That may be bringing about important changes, and we are only really beginning to see start to see what those are. There is a question about how much of a barrier the high development costs are, and do they lead to inequalities? There is, of course, an educational technology marketplace, and that will respond to demands. So are there inequalities emerging around, for example, the languages in which technologies are available? There is an important question too about how much simulations and gaming are actually improving how people learn, or whether technologies are more don't actually bring improvements in how people learn, but actually enable more efficient learning experiences in isolation of quality issues. Simulations, of course, also remove people from real workplace experiences, and that was mentioned, of course, in the poll in one of the responses there. And finally, there are questions around how they enable content creation by teachers and trainers, and also how teachers and trainers know what a good product is. It's a very, very complex and large marketplace, the educational technology marketplace. So I think teachers and trainers need assistance in how to identify products that will help them in their classrooms. So those are some ideas about the positives and challenges related to simulations and gaming. I'm sure there are many others, and so there's a question for you next, which you might like to think about during the course of the webinar, and we will pick up your responses. If you put them in the questions box, we will pick them up at the end of the webinar in the Q&A session. So we'd like to hear what other pros and cons you are aware of, what you've experienced, and so on. So thank you very much. I hope this gives you a brief pencil sketch of where we are now, and I'd like to hand back to Simon.
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks for this interesting presentation. And after this presentation, let's turn to practice. And I'm really happy to invite our next speaker, who will present some inspiring examples of simulation and gaming, the positive effect it has, and any challenges they face in implementing the practice. The first speaker is Petri Ahonimi. The floor is yours, Petri.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Yes, we can start. And yes, my name is Petri Ahonimi, and I'm from Finland. And in this presentation, I'm going to tell something about how we use simulators and robot in our educational sector. And maybe we can take next slide, please. Yes, thank you. Okay. First, I have to say it's good to be here and tell something. These kind of things. It's good. It feels good, and it's nice that we can share those things what we have done here. First, I have to apologize. I'm still struggling with this English language, but I try to do my best. Yes. A few words about our college. There's a lot of numbers, but we have about 5,000 students in our college, and we have very traditional way in this vocational education and training. But during last years, we have developed very, very much our apprentice educational programs. And I'm a head or manager, how can I say, in this industry and transport educational sector. And we have done a lot of work with simulators and robots with apprentice students. And I think we have get very, very good results. I think so. We can take next slide, please. Yes. what we do and what is our main focus when we talk about simulator training. I think when we talk about simulator, what it means that when you are working in workplace and you do work there, for example, driving a truck, you have to decide when you're doing first time something, you have to decide something which comes very fast to you. You have to do those things, and when you do those things first time, it's very difficult to you. But if you can do training with the simulator, it's much easier to get good results in real work. That's the main focus and most important thing in simulator training. You have a safe learning environment to practice your skills, and it's very important thing, I think. We have in our colleagues, we have several simulators. We have many kinds of simulators, but when we talk about logistic or transport, however I say it, we have there 4 simulators. They cost something like 50,000 euros. Our students can train to drive a truck, and we can change what kind of environment they are driving, what kind of roads they are driving. Are they driving in the dark or slippery road? And it's very good that they can do it in our school, and everything is safe, and they get very good guidance when they do that thing. I think one of the very important thing is that every student have own learning path, and they have their own story how to do those things. We don't usually take, when we have simulator training periods, we take just one student over there, and so that's the way how we get best possible guidance for the develop he or she skills, and it's good way to work. Sometimes we take smaller group, but usually there is just one student, because they have that individual learning path, and it's important that teacher can talk and give the full time for the student, and that's the way how we get the good results. And what is the meaning to be and do the simulator training? It's very important, especially for the apprentice students, because we have noticed that those apprentice students, when they are working at the workplace, they are newest workers over there, and sometimes they have a little bit difficult to find their place in that workplace, in that community of workplace. And we have noticed that if they can do practice with simulators, their skill levels getting higher and higher, they get a lot of self-confidence and courage to do things. That's why it's very important to do these things. And if you think about what kind of role teacher have, I think teacher have 2 ears and 2 eyes and 1 mouth. He have to see and listen student, what are those key points what he or she had to practice, and give full support for him. And maybe the most important thing in this simulator training is that when we practice some skills with simulators, we have to transfer those skills to real work life. And it's not always very simple, but teachers have very big role in this part of thing. And then there is a few words about soft skills. If we think that we have technical skills, otherwise we have soft skills. There is a lot of words over there, and these soft skills are very tricky and very funny things, because every one of us, those things are inside of us. There just be someone who tells that you can do things, you can be courage, and you can learn, you can understand, and you can listen. And we have noticed that if we practice those technical skills, you get a lot of confidence, you get the courage, and after that, if we combine this soft skills training, we get very good results. And end of this presentation, we can watch a short video about how we use robots with learning these soft skills. And these robots are good guys, because they are always friendly, and they can talk with you, and they don't blame you, and they are very nice guys. And this video includes a short clip when we use them training social skills and how to speak Finnish, learning to language. There is first beginning of this show, there is a short part of Finnish subtitles, but it's not a problem. Maybe you can learn to speak Finnish. Okay, bye.
Okay, we'll watch the video now.
Yes, it's okay.
All right. Okay. Okay, thank you for sharing the video. I think we move on to our next speaker. We go from Finland, where it's 10 degrees warmer, to Spain, to Unai Ziarzolo, who will present what simulations and gaming software is being used at Technica. Unai, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Simon. Hello, everyone. I'm Unai Ziarzolo, project manager at Miguel Altuna Vet Center at the Basque Country, Spain, and technical collaborator for Technica. My presentation this morning, I will briefly introduce you some examples of serious games based on virtual reality that Technica is developing for its use at vet provision. So I will give you some issues for hands-off training, digitalization, 4 examples, and some conclusion. Let me tell you a few words about Technica. Technica is the Basque Vet Applied Research Center, promoted by the Deputy Ministry of Vocational Education and Training on the Education Department at the Basque Country. And Technica develops innovative projects in the areas of technology, education, and management through networking and direct involvement by Basque vocational training teaching staff. Being said that, hands-on training, some issues to overcome. In our understanding, internship have always been the most popular and effective way of acquiring experience in vocational training in the Basque Country. Hands-off training allows students to get the skills and competences they need. Nevertheless, in some situations, hands-off trainings can entail some issues that are not easy to overcome, such those you can see there: physical safety of students and expensive equipment that they are using, high cost of consumables, or preparation time required for real exercises, and others. On the other hand, digitalization, the new generation are much more digitalized and tech savvy, since they have grown up in a world where the digital technology invades all the areas of their lives, finding it rather attractive. Therefore, we initially focused on serious games as a way to reach out to our students and as an alternative to overcome the main issues on hands-off training mentioned before. I will give you 4 examples about how we are using gaming, and the first one is called BayLab. BayLab is, we started in 2014. Technica developed the first non-immersive serious game called BayLab. The idea was based on the difficulty that catering schools have to provide materials for meat cutting, mainly beef meat cutting, to their students. To solve this issue, we developed a simulator in serious games format that allowed students to practice meat cutting through the different exercises. The first exercise is the menu and identification on parts. That it helps identifying each part of the animal. BayLab positioned in the upper left corner in the second picture indicates with affirmative or negative head movements the correct or incorrect answers. We have as a second exercise the location of the carcass and the puzzle. So the exercise asks the position of each piece of the carcass. So the third option allows to replace the position and orientation, 3D orientation of the piece on a part of the carcass, like putting a puzzle. The fourth exercise trains the students in cutting, allowing while using virtual knife. They have to extract the requested pieces from the portion of the carcass while making cutting lines in a 3D model. So they learn how to do the cutting. You will see a video later showing how it works. But I can say that with all the 4 exercises designed in different difficulty levels, allowing students to get used to the software and to get the knowledge. The aim is to motivate the self-improvement of each student through repetitions. Each exercise gives a score according to the time spent, and the students are placed on a list depending on the score obtained. So this promotes the competitiveness and encourages students to perform the exercises many times and improve their results. This game has been used in formal training and professional training courses with very good results. Currently, it's being used in 4 vocational educational training centers with around 150 students. And furthermore, since the solution can be used offline, we have registered a bigger number of downloads, which activities not registered. So the second example I will give you is called Auto Game. So it's a similar approach as the previous one. In 2016, Technica developed another simulator for the detection of electrical faults in automotive vehicles. This application allows teachers to simulate a large number of breakdowns that they can customize for their students. Using this simulator, we can reduce the cost of preparation time that is very high in this type of practices. The aim for the student is to learn the diagnosis process and the correct use of the measurement equipment. In terms of functionality, the application provides the students a circuit diagram of a real car with some breakdowns. The students can check how the vehicle should work with no breakdowns, and afterwards, using the breakdown mode, students must look for the breakdowns, making the necessary measurement. In order to motivate the students, the application will give a score based on the number of diagnosis tests that the students perform and the fatal errors and the time spent solving the problem. Testimonies of teachers that have tested the simulator reveal that students find it very interesting and motivating. The competitive factor encourages them to carry out more repetitions and to obtain better scores. Afterwards, inside the real labs, it seems that both the skills in actual practice and the confidence in decision-making are reinforced. Currently, it's used by 14 vet centers with around 560 students this year. Another example I have here is the drone flight. In Technica, we also use a drone simulator. This one is commercially distributed. It means that has not been developed by ourselves. It offers the advantage that the students can use the same control stick in VR training and for real flight. So that by the time the students practice with real drones, they are already used to the control stick. This simulator, which has the structure of serious game, has different stages and competition circuit. It is used in a vet center, which is homologated for drone pilots training. My last example is the control of Asian Hornet. The last serious games, this is not a VR, but it's a serious game, is focused to train the protocols to the elimination and control of Asian wasps. This gaming software is used in the environmental chemistry program with second-year students, which means an EQF5 level. In addition, there are didactic materials, including different contents developed to support the use of these serious games in those trainings. So as a conclusions, my main conclusions are that VR and serious games are attractive alternatives to overcome challenges as security, equipment cost, and accessibility in vet. Concerning serious games, one of the great advantages is that they can be played by the whole group of students simultaneously, for instance, in a computer room or whoever. They can be installed on personal computers and can be played at home, and they are very suitable for repetition learning, particularly where this is not possible in real practice due to the cost. The disadvantage, of course, is that they are not so close as to so close as a real hands-on experience. To finalize, you will see a short video showing 2 examples describing the Bay Lab and the auto game for crab breakdown detection, and to see how they look like. And there is also a sample of card painting beer-based application, which is not serious game. Thank you for everything. And Simon, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And we'll look at the video now. It will start now. And after that, I'll give the word to Alessandro. All right. Thanks a lot, Una, for your presentation and the interesting presentation, the video as well. I now give the floor to Alessandro, who will turn to the key question of how to ensure such methods are well integrated in apprenticeships to maximize their effectiveness. Alessandro, the floor is yours. And we are running a little bit late, so if you could kind of make some choices in your presentation, that would be much appreciated. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Simon. I try to be very, very quick. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share the work that my organization, the European Training Foundation, is doing in this respect, namely in how to support the use of digital technologies in teaching and learning. In that, I think at this stage, we have actually to try to answer to these two questions. So how to integrate properly digital technologies in teaching and learning in order to support engaging and meaningful learning experience. And this is the first question. The second one is what tools that institution could use to assess and improve their digital capacity for teaching and learning. Next slide, please. Okay, I try to be very fast if we move to, okay. So I want to be also honest in this in my presentation. I mean, it's complex to integrate digital technology in an effective way. The TPAC framework is a good reference. It highlights that we need to combine three knowledge domains about the content, of course, about the pedagogical knowledge, and last but not least, the technology knowledge that we need. And in order to be effective, we needed to engage, all the main actors, so the school managers, the teachers, but not forget, please, the students. Because they have to express their ambitious and attitude that is normally quite positive to the use of digital technology, so can really be an active actor. And of course, that institution that want to integrate technology has to aim to really implement, let's say, some pedagogical, technological, and organizational change. The three elements are interconnected. Next slide, please. Now, here we have to understand why we want to introduce the technology. And I think the practical example gave a lot of very concrete hints. But clearly, simulation tools should aim to improve the learning outcomes of that students through a meaningful, a progressive learning experience. I remember Petri was mentioning, first we have to be prepared to faster reaction and proper reaction, and the simulation tool is in between before entering into the work-based learning experience in the real one, because it could be dangerous. So simulation tools, and according also to the poll, I think it's important that is there to get ready to the real job, to the authentic work experience. Serious games are very often associated to the assessment of complex skills, could be problem solving, could be the soft skills or 21st century skills of individual or groups of students. They could work, the gamification is really something that can bring engagement. And it's very important to have a positive learning experience. This is for better learning outcomes as well, but it's also to have a positive attitude, let's say, to the lifelong learning, because we are now often assuming, okay, this is for formal initial that, but this is not enough. Upskilling and reskilling are always something that pupils now at school will need in the future. So and let's say this has to be, when we think to bring in technology, has to be driven by pedagogy. That is very clear. No? If we want to force, let's say, a learning center approach, we mentioned already from the practical example personalizations. Okay, that's great, but we need more data. We need more, let's say, individualized resources, and this can be, clearly supported by technology. And whether this is a simulation tool or whether this is a serious games. Next slide, please. Can we move? Okay, thank you. I mean, here I don't want to really spend a lot of time because I have to be quite fast, but of course, there are very important preconditions. I mean, we learn a lot from the COVID experience. And for sure, within your VET institution, if you want to use a technology, well, okay, you need to have an ecosystem that is ready. We need the infrastructure, equipment. This is for granted. Let me say this is the easy part of the exercise of implementing digital technologies in teaching and learning. And normally, this is a responsibility at national level, of policy level. So what I would really, I see very important, it's the second component, and it's more linked to the human capital dimension. So it's about the skills, it's about the knowledge, it's about the attitude. it's about an organizational capacity to be innovative through the use of digital technology. This is more complex because it's specific to each VET institution, to the VET program that the school is aiming to deliver, and also to the capacity of teachers to change. Changing is not easy for all of us, we know. But let me say that after the COVID-19, we have a bunch of knowledge and evidence that the attitude of teachers is is changed. Is changed toward the technology. So let's go to the next slide, please. Now, I want to really go to the point. Now, I try to answer to my second question. So in concrete terms, if you are the school manager, or you are a teacher, or you are a student, maybe we have students, we are lucky, but what tools that institution could use to assess and improve the digital capacity for teaching and learning? I mean, there are some tools but as at the very beginning, let's say, Tim was mentioning, there is a EU tool that has been developed and launched in October 2018. This is the Selfie, is a self-reflection tool to help school assess how they use digital technology to support teaching and learning. And Selfie can enable schools to get a picture of where you are and to see what is working well and what is less working. And so this is, let's say, a very practical tool. Is already translated in more than 30 languages. I mean, it's going beyond the EU member states. And it's a tool that is involving all the school communities. I mean, school managers, teachers, and students. And what is quite important, and Timo was mentioning at the beginning, is that a new version of Selfie is being launched in Q3 2021. So now, let's say, that is a version that is for role-based learning. What does it mean in concrete terms? That Selfie is bringing in also in this collective self-reflection the in-company trainers. So is basically the concept of the theoretical framework behind Selfie it remains the same, but there is also a bunch of questions that is for the students, for the in-company trainers. And it's very important that the digital strategy that that institution want to put in place and put into actions involve the company. Company are entrepreneurs. The company are really have a very practical approach. So it's very important that the educational dimension and somehow the practical skills dimension are put together. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. This is an example on how this Selfie can be applied by a VET institution and in general by a school. It's based on, this is the process that we have just undertaken in Ukraine. We work in the partner countries of the EU, and they are making a national pilot of Selfie, including VET institutions. And basically, you see the process, the timeline, and the main steps that schools and the VET institution has to undertake in order to implement Selfie. Now, I don't have to go through all the process, but normally, let me say that there is a Selfie school coordinator that is in charge to run the first step and coordinate the first step involving the school community. Is about tailoring the questionnaire, because this is you have to think what you want to achieve and what is your problems. So I mean, you can customize the questionnaire. This is very important to know. Then you launch the survey. The survey, when it's closed, this tool that is fully online and free, of course, is automatically producing a report making an analysis of all the dimension. In selfie, there are 8 areas in order to have a holistic approach or where to identify the bottleneck. And then there is a discussion within the school about the outcomes. They normally come out with one priority and a set of action to put in the school development plan in order to improve the situation. Now, the point is that if you run this regularly, and there are also comparative report, you can really have your strategy and you can see your path in improving the use of digital technology. So I will stop here in order to fit a bit on the time. But if you have any question, please do not hesitate to contact all of us. In order to have more information. Over to you, Simon.
Thanks, Alexander, and all our speakers for their contributions. Now I would like to invite the participants to ask questions. Can you please also indicate to whom you would like to raise the question as well, and please use the question box to raise your question. And also, Milda, I would like to invite you to kind of monitor whether there are questions coming in. I think we don't have that much time, but I think we can take 1 or 2 questions if there are any.
Yes, indeed. And we already have one. I would also invite all the speakers to come in as well. And we received a question. What supports are available to develop more technologies in our apprenticeships programs at EU level? So I was wondering, maybe Tim, you would have a bit more information on that.
Thank you for the question. To actually develop technology, I'm not so sure if there is direct funding for this. There is, of course, a lot of funding to support digitalization, for example, through the European Social Fund, but there it depends a lot on what are then the actual priorities in the member states, because the European Social Fund is implemented in a shared way between member states and the Commission, and the Commission set some broader priorities for this, and then it's the member states who do the work on the ground. We have in Erasmus Plus, of course, there are some projects that focus on digitalization. Of course, there you always have this international dimension, that it's a key that you work together with partners from different countries, and it's less about supporting training, it's more about developing together, for example, curricula to bring different strengths together from different partners. There's now also the recovery plan, where you have 750 billion euros with the REACT-EU money to react to the crisis, and a big share of this goes into these national recovery plans. And there, as a Commission, we also insisted that digital is one of the main priorities in most countries. Now it depends again on the situation each and every country, whether this is related to digital education, specifically to that, one has to see. But there is a lot of money out there, because, as I said, we see also digitalization of education and training in general is one of the big priorities.
Okay, thank you. We received another question regarding the costs. So I was wondering, maybe Petri or Onai could answer this. So who bears the costs of these tools? Are these vet institutions or the students who are renting out the equipment and so on? So maybe you could answer that.
In the case of the Basque Country, the Vice Ministry is funding a lot of implementation of these resources in vet centers. So mainly everything that is being developed at Technica is paid by is public funding, because it's a public body. And then in the cases of commercial software, then the vocational centers are the one that are investing in those equipment. In any case, in most of the cases, students don't pay for the use of the simulation. In most of the cases, because we believe that we have to let them the tools in order to have a good learning process.
Milda, if I may just add quickly to the point of the support. I mean, of course, the money is very, very important. This is clearly, we have to find funds. Yeah, there are not economic solutions, but there is another element that is quite important. That is the support, for example, that for self exists from a methodological point of view. There are tools to support the implementation. There are, let's say, processes in a way that they can guide schools to make this happening. This is another important dimension. So the organizational capacity and, let's say, to have a strategic approach in this respect. So the development of intelligence to apply technology, this is another important. And there are a lot of documents that can and training and resources in this respect. Over to you, Milda.
Okay, thank you. Patrick, do you want to add to a nice response, or we move to the next question?
Well, we can move to the next question.
Okay. So I'm cautious of the time. So the last question was asked by Christina, who's saying that we usually expect that students are more tech savvy than the vet teachers. So how students' interest in digital skills are being taken into consideration while designing all these digital education tools? I'm not sure to whom it's addressed, who can pick that up.
Well, I want to just eventually add a point in this respect. Assuming that, for example, you consider to use a selfie for improving your digital capacity, the conceptual frameworks is connecting the use of technology to the development of digital skills and competencies. So, I mean, the actions, there is a clear correlation between the two items. It's the more we use technologies in education, the more develop not only the job-specific digital skills, but the digital competence that are necessary to live in the digital society. So, I mean, there are frameworks, again, that for me is very important, that are providing guiding question and self-reflections elements that connect the two elements in order to achieve learning outcomes in terms of what the practical skills must be, but also to develop the related digital skills. So this is something that the selfie tool, for example, is providing and helping to build, you know? That's my view.
Okay, I'm sure we will add links to the selfie tool and all the description and in the slides, so all the attendees can check out for themselves. Please write your questions. We do not have time to take on any more. However, we will ask our speakers to answer them in writing, and we will add them in the follow-up emails after the webinar. So please write your questions still. I would also like to still stay a bit for a couple of minutes for the feedback survey that we usually launch around this time, and we would like to ask you about your overall satisfaction of this webinar. We always collect all of your feedback about each webinar, and we try to improve. Okay. Thank you very much. I see that you're voting. I will close now, and I will ask you a question about the usefulness of this webinar. Okay, thank you very much. We would also like to know if the webinar met your expectations. Okay, thank you very much for voting. I see that more and more people are voting, so thank you very much. We would also like to ask about the duration of the webinar. Was it too long? Is 1 hour about right, or it should be shorter? Okay, and then the last question is what parts you like the most? So you can pick more than one option here. Okay, I'm glad to see that the content of the webinar was very much appreciated. Okay, thank you very much. I will close now the feedback session. And then we come to an end. And I would like to thank you all for joining us this morning, and also to all the speakers for their interventions. Do also keep an eye on the Apprenticeship Support Services website for news and further information about the upcoming webinars. EAfA webinars are going on holidays, and we'll come back to you in September with new topics, and we will be discussing the experiences from and advantages of national apprenticeship coalitions. Also, watch out for the next live discussion on gender equality in apprenticeships. How can we close the gap in participation? It's taking place on 24th of June, and the registrations are open. So feel free to check out the EAfA website for the registration link if you're interested. We are also soon launching the next online training module on apprenticeships as a first choice, a guide to apprenticeships to young and adult learners. So check out the EAfA website or any LinkedIn updates for that. I would also like to again thank you all the speakers for joining us, and Simon for moderating the discussion, and for everyone who joined in and for your active participation. As I mentioned before, the recording and the presentation will be shared with you shortly. I don't know if Simon, you want to say closing words.
No, thanks. Thanks a lot to all. It has been quite an interesting webinar with some, on the one hand, really policy-oriented messages from the EU towards kind of positioning the whole topic in a wider landscape, but also finding out about practical experiences and tools, and also learning a little bit more about how organizations and schools can kind of foster this idea about digitalization and simulation and gaming through the selfie tool. So no, it has been, thanks a lot, and I learned a lot at least. So that's at least on my side a positive note. So thanks a lot, and that's all from my side.
Okay. So thank you all then again for joining, and when we close the webinar there will be a survey question, so if you have any comments, suggestions how these webinars can be improved, or if you have any questions to the participants, again feel free to add your questions in there. If not, I wish you all a great Thursday afternoon, and good luck to you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Bye. Bye.